Today in the show, I have the pleasure of speaking with Babak Ziai. Babak is a founder and managing principal at Brandview Capital Partners, an innovative commercial real estate investment management and advisory firm. Babak is also a professor of real estate at the University of Southern California, and he's extremely passionate about solving problems at the convergence of multiple disciplines of community, space, finance, and innovation. I'm really pumped and excited to have him on the show to share his incredible experience and insight. But enough out of me. Let's get him out here. G'day, Babak. Welcome to the show. How you doing today, mate?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Reed.
Mate, my pleasure. We met a couple of weeks ago through a very good friend of mine, and apparently you used to work with him. And I'm really excited to talk to you today because when we did meet, you were just talking all in and about, and just a bit of a preface for this show, about how people live, work, and play, and how real estate development really plays into those three aspects. And I want to get into that in a little bit. But before we do, can you rewind the clock and take us back to when you made your first ever dollar as a kid?
Sure, absolutely. There's actually really two quick moments that come to mind. One is when I was about, I was saving up for a new bike. I didn't get an allowance, and my parents wouldn't let me get a job because I was only 10 years old. And so I did have a bike that I really wanted to look like one of the BMX racers. So I painted it, I stripped out the gold from the spokes and made it chrome, effectively modified this bike. And then our local community fair was around the corner, and I decided I was going to raffle tickets to win the bike, and I felt that if I raffled the tickets, I would get a better total revenue than if I sold the bike. I wasn't confident in the secondary markets for my bike, but I was in my ability to raffle the bike.
Awesome.
So the crazy thing that happened was the raffle went well. I think I raised something like $85, and the girl that won it is actually a family friend of mine, and she wins like this souped up wannabe BMX bike, and her parents bought her the ticket, and she just said, well, I don't know what to do with this. It's effectively a boy's bike. And I said, oh, okay. She's like, you want it back? I was like, okay. It was just silly. And so I ended up taking the bike back and then raffling it again at the fair. And so it was this funny thing. But that was my first understanding of, how your view of something can be, marketed to the mainstream as a way to better utilize something like an old bike that I had spent a lot of time putting modifications into, but just didn't know what it could sell for. So I just thought I would market it to a wider audience.
That's awesome. So your view of something is different from what the wider mass is, and they may find value in that thing, and you can essentially sell it to them, right?
I think that's right. I think as long as you see value and you can communicate that value after you've created it, or at least communicate your ability to create it, I think those are big lessons. I mean, the other moment was similar. I would assemble new skateboards out of a bunch of old skateboard parts, and the same thing. I would sell them to my friends and say, well, you should buy this skateboard not only for the skateboard, but I'll also teach you. Right. I was very into skateboarding when I was really young, so this kind of just again being of value to others by putting in the work yourself. And so that was, again, and I just never knew. Well, I never thought, like a lot of times you think, well, if I can make it for X, I can sell it for Y. Yep. I just really wanted to make something good and sell it, and I just thought, well, I don't know if they're going to buy it, so I'll also teach them how to skateboard. I was really young. I was just thinking about how you can help someone and create something for them, without necessarily being profit driven, but just getting some money for it, for all the work you put in, putting the board together and teaching them the skateboarding and, creating this new possibility of, how the board works for them. So.
Awesome stuff. Well, mate, look, with all that experience teaching kids how to skateboard and repurposing bikes, now bring us into where you are today. Like, what's that journey look like for you to get involved in, you've started your own business in Brandview Capital. How did that journey come about? Because a lot of people start off in real estate, and I know just, you have experience in the world of commercial real estate. So you want to give us a bit of insight into how you got it started in the real estate industry?
Yeah, I guess. So I started Brandview Capital Partners about 5 years ago. Prior to that, I had cut my teeth at a large-scale commercial real estate investment company that also was a development So I spent 10 years there, and I got to ride an entire cycle of real estate all the way up, all the way down, and then back on its way up. And I got to really understand both the investment side as well as the operational side of buying, operating, managing, and adding value to large-scale properties on behalf of investment funds, which included pension funds, all very large-scale properties. I was very lucky for this training. And I finally arrived at the impetus to go off on my own when I was becoming very confident in my experience and ability to find opportunities, as well to analyze them, and then assemble a plan that was truly feasible and start actually even working with them. On a parallel path, raising institutional capital. So institutional would mean large investors. Normally you would just have one because it's a very large size investment, anywhere from a minimum of 10 million to 50 million of equity. So if you add, if you even get a loan at 50% of your total project cost, those are $50 to $100 million projects. And so in effectively being able to find the deal and then go raise the money and then put the deal together and then start operating the deal, I said, wait, I've done this a few times now where I could probably take my show on the road. That was really the internal introspective lead to it. The external was, as I built this, what's called mixed-use development platform for my old company, I really saw the opportunity to do much more dynamic value creation around mixed-use properties, really leading with retail. So retail being the most shifted of the property types in the last 5 years due to how we now buy things online, Amazon, how now with time we're left with, we really enjoy experiences. I thought, wow, that's really been the most disrupted part of real estate, in my view, in the last 5 years. That's really where the opportunity is, to start there and then translate that back into not only retail, but housing and office use. So that was really the mission. And those two together led us to starting.
Awesome. So, just to summarize it, you had all that years of experience, and then to have the balls to go out and start your own real estate company, that would have taken a little bit, right? Like, you got to essentially now back yourself, all those 10 years or 10 plus years of experience in institutional financing, finding deals, analyzing them. So to have that skill set to say, I can go do this by myself, it's a pretty big leap, right? And do you want to talk a little bit about that mental anguish I'm sure we all face? I've been there. I know when I first met, we spoke a lot about that, but
sure.
Just a little bit about how you overcame that to say to yourself, well, screw it, I'm going to back myself and I've got to go out and do this thing.
Yeah, I think that, and so that, that was, for me, 10 years in the making, right? I think in my 5th year into the job, really my 6th year, I started thinking, okay, I really want to go out and prepare to do this on my own. So along the way, I started to think about ways, as I looked at the business I was working for, how I could do this on my own. Everything I worked on, I started to think about this. I started to simulate, wow, what if it was just me? How would I solve this problem without these other resources? How can I be resourceful on my own? Because the interesting thing about real estate is some of the largest developers are 2-3 person companies. And you always wonder, and those were my idols. And so fast forward, a lot of friends of mine were also, threatening, quote unquote, to make the leap. And one of them was the most impactful, who said, listen, what's your downside? You don't have, at the time, and still don't have a large overhead with a lot of family and kids. Even if you did, you just have to look at it from what's the worst that can happen and get comfortable with the downside. And for me, the downside was, okay, if you spend a bunch of money, lose a bunch of time, but learn a lot of lessons, is it really a net loss? It's actually probably the most valuable thing. And in exchange for that, if nothing works out, and I realize most importantly that I don't want to do this anymore, just go back to work. Your downside is your salary going back to work. And so I said, boy, that downside's pretty, I don't want to go back to corporate world, but it's not that bad of a downside. And I think that's where the psyche has really evolved over the years, where I've become a more entrepreneurial, freelance economy in the US. I think that has become increasingly how people start to look at it, which is the worst that can happen is I lose money, maybe I rack up some debt, but I go back to work and it's not the end of the world.
No, I completely agree with everything you just said there. And looking at your downside, and part of what I struggled with internally was that getting off that paycheck, right? That sort of drug of corporate America, or just the corporate world. Because a lot of listeners on the show are listening from around the world. But it's there's always that one image that comes to my mind when I did make the leap. There's an image, I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's this big, huge horse, and he's tied to a plastic chair. And because he's tied, because his reins are tied around, and he thinks he's tied to a tree and he can't move. But it's a plastic chair. He's a big horse. He could just literally walk down the street and so many of us as entrepreneurs face that internal struggle of I'm that horse. And it's not that bad. It's just a plastic chair. I can always find another plastic chair to hitch my reins to if something was to go wrong. And I guess the downside, as you said, is I can just go back and get another job. That's the downside. And you learn a ton along the way, right, about yourself and about how to make it happen and be resourceful and all that sort of stuff.
I got to tell you, I've been lucky to be involved with $1 billion of development projects working for a company, and that was a really, really good diversity of experiences, both operating real estate and investing. But nothing teaches you about yourself and about business and about not only being resourceful, but from your failures, how to be resourceful, as going on this path. And it's funny because looking back, I was like, God, what if I didn't go through this? And I was no slouch at my old job, and I was, regarded, and I felt I was a decently high output individual at my firm. I got promoted a lot. Everything was fine. I was putting up numbers. It was great. But God, if I didn't learn these lessons, would I be as good of a future father, partner, family member, son to my parents? You learn some real lessons on when your back's against the wall. How do you solve the problem? And that's one of the most intense but educational and meaningful lessons that you keep basically putting yourself in front of. And a lot of people say, "But God, it's hard. It's a grind," But on the other way I think about it is it's high octane learning that really translates to other parts of your life.
100% agree. And what you said about your back is against the wall. And that's essentially what it is, right? You are now responsible. I always talk about you eat what you kill, right? And that's the gruesome thing to think of, but it's true.
Sure.
Like you're a lion right now. Before you had someone providing you kibble every day, and you can eat, right? Yeah. Now you're responsible for putting food on the table, and that is scary. And I get it. We're there, but again, back to that analogy of the horse. If you've got the experience like you have 10 years, $1 billion worth of experience, you were able to go out and make it happen. And I guess the big underlying topic of this is that you backed yourself, right? Like you if you can't back yourself, who are you going to ever back, right? As an entrepreneur. So I could talk the whole show about this entire topic, but it's such a interesting dichotomy that people face, and you're so addicted to this paycheck, but then to go out and all of a sudden, wow, I can replicate my paycheck, double my paycheck, triple my paycheck within a year, using my own resources. Like, wow, that's incredible. So,
and I would even start with, hey, I'm making a quarter of my paycheck, but I created it myself. And there's an energy flow that comes from that, which is, oh, well, I'm still not making what I'm making, but it's more like, wow, I just created this mini engine for, and whatever your metric is, but I created this little engine that could, starting with 10% of my paycheck. Wow. By solving problems and channeling my experience and creating value for others, that feels good. And then once that feels good, you start building on that. You just say, God, these little wins are actually huge, right? And then you say, okay, well, now I've been doing that for a while. How do I treat this? And, so it's a journey.
Did you have a number in your mind or in your bank account that you said, okay, I've got X amount of dollars in stash, I can go do this for a year? And did you give yourself a time horizon?
It's interesting. I didn't, and at times I would. In general, I didn't. In general, I said, yeah, I have some savings. It's never going to be enough. The way I looked at it was, really twofold. One is I'm gonna bleed money, or in other words, I'm going to operate at a loss every month, a bleed, quote unquote. But is that really a bleed, or is that really an investment in yourself? And that's what it is, right? So anytime, I think people always think, God, if I won't be able to make my payments. You know, you think about the government, not to make a political statement, but we have compounding debt, right, in the fiscal economy here in the U.S. But a lot of others would look at that and say, well, when you have negative cash, right, cash going out versus coming in, that means you're actually building something.
Right.
And people know, I think that's what, you know, I think startup entrepreneurs who have, you know, backing, and they start to look at it that way. But when you're looking at it yourself, I think somehow I find with a lot of people in general, that mental model gets lost, where it's like, well, if it's me, I got to cover my expenses.
Right. No, I think bleed versus investment in yourself, and that's such a good way to look at it. It is an investment in yourself, because going on an entrepreneurial journey, even if you're going to do it for a year or 2 years and it just turns out you can't do it or whatever, you lose money. And, you know, there's been a lot of successful business people out there, you know, who have started things, and the first thing they start is not the end thing that they end up at, right? They don't, you know, it's not, I'm sure Zuckerbergs of the world and the Googles, they didn't start at Facebook. They didn't start at Google. It had iterations before they went to where it is today. And that's how we all are. You know, we'd like to take that 10 years worth of experience in real estate and put it into action and yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, I love how you said bleed versus investment in yourself. And I think it's so true that you've got to think of it as an investment in yourself. And to help you sleep at night, one of the things that I was doing is, yes, I did have a year's worth of income in my bank account. So I was like, okay, I can do this for a year. A year came past, okay, I doubled that. Okay, great, I can do it for another year. And just kept buying myself time. And that for me, because everyone's different, right? That helped me just sleep at night and keep, like, I can pay for my expenses, I can keep the roof over my head, but I can go on this journey. So I think it's really, really incredible.
And I would say my other answer to the number that would keep coming up was, I have this money in my bank account. I'm very conservative about this money in my bank account, which would be about a year of salary, similar. But I was like, God, I'm the only son of my parents. I want to create cushion for them. You know, they're retiring. God knows what can happen. I just wore a lot of this, call it responsibility, on my shoulders. Also this feeling of like, I'm doing this, I really feel it's selfish. If I have a savings, I want it to be cushion for others. I don't want to be anybody's liability but my own. So the way I thought about it was, okay, we're going to do some consulting while we build the business. And that consulting should hopefully at least partially offset some of the expense for, you know, if this takes longer than a year to figure out and nail, which it absolutely has, and I can go into why. And it's one of the weirder ways that it has, because I hit very early success. And then I went on to, you know, really delaying a lot of lessons later. But that's how I came about it. It was like, you can always do some consulting, problem solving, or hourly or fixed or retainer pay as a way to partially, if not fully, offset. But be careful that it doesn't, you know, keep you from focusing on the main thing, which is
right.
So it's a balance.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great little segue or stepping stone. Those people who are out there still on a W-2 or on a paycheck, a way in which you can transition a little bit more into your business is by transitioning to a 1099 if the company allows you to do it. I actually did that myself. I went from, you know, working 60 hours a week, and then I said, hey, I need to work on this thing. Can I consult for you for 25 hours a week on a 1099? Now, some businesses may not allow you to do it, but it's the weaning off that helps you allow to free up some time to work on a business, but then also keeps, you know, the bills paid, so to speak, and let you sleep at night.
and I will say, for those that really have a, you know, I think having a business plan and a number all changes the second you actually jump. You know, so what I keep coming back to is do enough to feel like you're getting some compensation, but really treat it as an opportunity to get paid to learn about what you really want to focus on. Your business plan might not actually really be baked. It actually probably isn't until you go out and execute on it, which means you really need to be full-time, not working at W-2. So you will find that consulting is a really opportunistic way to, in the sense of getting some compensation to start solving problems out in the real world toward partially, if not fully, confirming your thesis for investing. If I was helping other family offices, investors think through their investment decisions on certain deals as a consultant, and that helped me fine tune what I thought was a great way to invest on their behalf, ultimately. So there is some fun convergence that you can find between the consulting, and if you're building an investment business, to use the consulting as a way to experiment and not lose all your time, get some paid for it.
No, I completely agree. And I think the other thing, everyone out there, and I don't encourage people, and we're not encouraging just go quit your job, but everyone's life's going to be different, right? The one thing that someone told me one time is the lights are never always all going to be green, right? It's not going to just be a straight shot of green lights. And sometimes you have to take those little steps of consulting. You've got years of experience. I've always looked at jobs being, what is the most skills that I can pull out of this job that can help me ultimately become my own boss? And I think that's what you always have to have in mind, that right now you may not be in a position to leave your full-time job or whatever it might be. So let's work on the next 6 to 12 months of getting those skills, being that person that someone can lean on, in order to then create a consultancy little business to then wean yourself back and work on your business on the side, in a year's time or 18 months time. So I think it's a really important thing we touched on, because I know with yourself, you're talking to me from another WeWork-esque co-working space. I'm calling from a co-working space here in Manhattan Beach. So we're making it happen. We're all entrepreneurs at the end of the day.
Yes.
But I do want to dive into the topic of today's show, which is really all in and around your thought philosophy over how we are building things in today's world, particularly as it relates to retail. You mentioned early on in the interview that people, and rightly so, are shopping online, and the investment into retail per se, and maybe restaurants, is somewhat viewed as a high risk investment. Do you want to start at the beginning of your sort of retail investing 101 for the layman out there listening right now, and why you think it's still a good opportunity in 2019?
Absolutely. I think overall, when you're looking at retail, you're looking at a macro sector. So retail really, as a word, encompasses a lot of subspecialties within the space. I mean, there's retail. There are at least 4 to 5 different retail property categories: malls, neighborhood centers, community centers, power centers, strip centers, street retail. And so all of those have different dynamics to them. So as a sector, retail is always going to be part of our economy. However, what has happened in terms of how goods are purchased and sold, and how therefore the space is used for the purchase, for not only the purchase and the transaction of it, but also for the physical testing of whether it's a good or service within the retail sector, how that now takes place. And so just historically speaking, retail we have not changed. Retail has not fundamentally changed in over 30 years in terms of going into the store, seeing, a product of food, or taking a service like getting, if you're a female, getting your nails done, for example, paying for it and leaving. That hasn't been disrupted in over 30 years. So it has been high time for a change via technology. And that's really been the advent of e-commerce, the internet, specifically Amazon. But there are social elements to it as well that factor, right? Retail historically in our culture and economy has been a way for humans to interact. And, there hasn't, the peak of human interaction actually happens most, when, in terms of focus, in terms of when families spend time together, it's out buying things, it's out eating things. And so then what is the overlay that creates the opportunity for retail? The bottom line, the real bottom line is, and by the way, we're not just a retail-focused property investor. We focus on all 4 property types: retail, office, multifamily, and to some extent, logistics and industrial. But where we see the real leading up, we really lead with retail because of this shift. And the bottom line is this: all of this, in our view, has translated into, within street retail, within mall retail, and within some neighborhood centers, depending on the uses, retail has been using too much space and paying rent for it. up until the last 5 years. And so we are going through a seismic shift in how they now use space to in turn provide value to the customers who can now choose between buying in the store, buying online, picking up from the store. There's a bunch of iterations now. And so, but the way we look at it, because real estate is very much, it doesn't really translate unless it's simplistic, like buy low, sell high. What's my IRR? So all of these things aside, with retail is effectively tenants in the retail sector have been leasing too much space. So what then is the opportunity? And so that's really where we say retail is now mixed use. Retail really then means when there's a space on 3rd Street Promenade here in Santa Monica, where it was a 2-story flagship store leased to Adidas for all of it. And Adidas decides this is just too much space, and we're paying too high of a rent per square foot on this space. We're going to go move down the street into a smaller space. Well, there you have the proof, right? They now pay same or slightly less rate per square foot on less space. So rate times less space equals less rent for them. They don't need that physical floor space anymore. They do need enough to still expose customers to their brand, the experience, the education of their product, and they're going to constantly figure out what the best mix is as a user of space. As an investor and developer of space, we look at that and say, well, wow, that leaves an amazing vacant space on 3rd Street Promenade. What does that now want to be? And we say, wow, well, you know what? It still wants to be retail, but perhaps it just needs to be retail on the ground floor. And perhaps even the retail on the ground floor can be multiple tenants who have the same incentive to want to have space in a high foot traffic environment like 3rd Street Promenade. But their sales from physical stores are a lot less to warrant paying as much rent. So they want a presence. They want what's called billboard value to have a sign on the promenade where all these people want to buy, but they don't need as much space. So great, let's chop up the space on the ground floor. And then wait, we have this entire 2nd floor left. What does that want to be in this location? Well, we know that office space vacancy in Santa Monica is under 5% total. And that could easily be a new form of office. Creative office is really what everybody's calling office now. But perhaps it could even be co-working office. And then that really goes well with the high foot traffic environment, very amenitized, in terms of going for places to eat. And so suddenly you've taken a 2-story vacant box that has been, I would say, over-exaggerated as part of the retail apocalypse. And now you've created a wonderful solution where not only people can have multiple places to shop and interact in multiple small retail spaces on the ground floor, also on the 2nd floor now there's a place to work. And we're talking about some of the best real estate in terms of location in West LA. So it takes that multidisciplinary view, that vision of seeing value where others don't. It's like the bike. Like, this is an old bike until I maybe change some of the parts out and it maybe looks like a hybrid of something else. Same thing.
I think I love, very good explanation for those people out there who don't understand the evolution of retail. And I like how you put it, that historically retail has been over getting too much space. And these big box retailers, everyone's scared, these big box retailers are going out of business. And the way in which you described it was very on point. It's just that they've historically had too much space to start with. And now the way in which we buy, i.e. online, that means that they don't need as much of that space. So maybe they can downsize. Now, I want to ask you, with those big box retailers, and that's where everyone sees these big headlines on the news, oh gosh, so-and-so is going out of business, Sears is going out of business. How do you answer those people on the box retail side? And just let's put mixed use to one side for a second in terms of the interaction of apartments up above and retail and blah, blah, blah. That's from a design point of view. But from the historical big box retailer point of view, in strip centers, how are you seeing that change into people losing money and going bankrupt and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like any cycle, like in any sector, there is a time when innovation causes a seismic shift, and it really is healthy. It's a healthy thing. So for us, this shift from big box retailers. And by the way, big box stores are still very in demand. It's just not as many of them. And those that are underperforming, again, present the opportunity because they have so much real estate. This is usually right off the freeway, has a good amount of parking. These are large footprint spaces. And so that leaves an amazing, once in a generation opportunity to go into a very well located piece of property that has been controlled by a Walmart or a Lowe's or other on these very long-term leases, in effect, what's called encumbered. Couldn't get to the space. Now they're finally giving up those spaces, and Sears is the best example because Sears is one of the oldest companies, as you know.
So, sorry, Babak, just come a little bit closer to the mic. It's a little bit hard. So,
Sears.
There we are.
And if you didn't hear me, I meant I was saying that Sears is one of the oldest retailers in America, and they have controlled some of the best real estate locations in throughout the U.S. over the years, and they do very long-term leases. And so now, when they're going through a restructuring, that again presents an amazing real estate opportunity to breathe a new life into those spaces, because these are again high foot traffic, high visibility, spaces that now have finally been unlocked to do something better with. So I think it's healthy. I think it's a fantastic time to shed a lot of this skin, to shed a lot of this excess space, and reinvent.
So with those high, so we're going to just separate into two things. You're talking about the Santa Monicas. These are very, Santa Monica is one of the hottest sub-markets in the country. To say up there with San Francisco, New York, and the Wall Streets of the world. But then you do have these Midwest type of locations where it's very bedroom communities, highways going into the middle of bloody nowhere, and they just build a community and they slap a Sears or a Home Depot or whatever it is on 18, 19 acres. There's maybe 2 or 3 different major retail. It's a true strip center. How are you seeing those types of retail change the way we consume things? And then what is the investment opportunity for that type of it, for those spaces? Because again, we've got the Santa Monicas in the real hot neighborhoods. But then we've got these Midwest type of things where the cap rate's a lot higher and the cash flow better. So what opportunities could you make with those type of assets?
Yeah, I think in a lot of those cases, the big box, or what's called the anchor, right, the biggest tenant in the center, is still highly performing. What 2 things arise. One is for example, with a Walmart or a Home Depot, they now have ways where you can purchase online and then just go pick up at the store easier than waiting. They have other ways to service you both online and physically in the store, which is what they call this term omni-channel, multiple channels. So they service that. So it's not to say that the big boxes are going to go down, but what the big boxes now need is good, strong co-tenancy, meaning they need their neighbors to really bring the same level of traffic to the center in order to promote sales for all of them. And so that's where the opportunity now is. So one is the anchors are reinventing how they do it, but really it's Walmart, for example, they actually own most of their sites. And what they have done is said, okay, we actually want to invest additional dollars in creating community centers in front of our spaces around parking that we're not using, because there's just not as many cars going there, but there's enough and their sales are okay, but they're doing a lot online. The equation changes. These retailers aren't hurting. They're just getting a higher disproportionate share of their sales online now. So they still want the physical presence, but they're saying, well, we need to still create experience for people to come through. And so Walmart has been very proactive about creating community spaces, even bringing in tenants that they co-tenant with very well to take over their vacant neighbors' boxes. And so they've been very proactive about that. Another retailer as grocery is Albertsons. They're doing, they're doing delivery to the home as well as pickup. And they're as well trying to buy their own real estate under their leases to themselves redevelop who they want as their neighbors in the center. So really the base of sales goes up. They help each other maximize sales for each other, which in turn increases their ability to pay rent, and for us real estate folks, makes for a lower risk, higher cash flow investment.
I know, I love it. So with that being said, what are you seeing these big box retailers let's call it co-invest, or who are they trying to attract in order to downsize in their space, but then still keep the high volume of sales going through? Well, what's a good you said here co-tenancy? Who would be co-tenancy?
So there's these, there's a couple of these what are called the F's. There's what people still need to do, still prefer to do physically than online. And a lot of it is they just simply can't eat online. You can't literally eat a meal through the internet, right? So there's, furniture. You still need to test out your couch before you buy it. Although, some of the companies, the mattress companies are getting better at that. But in general, picking out a couch is still a pretty physical endeavor. So furniture, food, obviously, having food around the center. People still want to go interact and be around each other. Fitness, again, unless you're, only Peloton or, you haven't, you still like to be in a group, physical, human environment. So those three really drive it. It's like, okay, well, who can we have that, people still want to do these things outside. They still want to place, usually it was a place for commerce that drove it experience. Now that place for commerce has been bifurcated into online and physical. But so how can we still promote human interaction and experience in these spaces? I mean, if you look at, other, these are other more, tangential examples, but Coachella is the largest music festival in the world.
Yep.
Why? Because people want to get outside of their house and be around each other and experience something, right? Burning Man is growing by, every year is getting sold out faster and faster, because what we're finding is over time, technology is taking over not only workers, but spaces, which leaves everyone with time and the need to want to do other things to be around each other. And so that is the opportunity, is programming all of that together.
Interesting. No, I think, I completely agree that people are wanting experiences. And things come to mind, if we just think about that Midwest type of large campus, a lot of parking, your fitness, as you said, your banking is probably something you want to go and do in person, even, to an extent, get your nails done, getting your oil changed, coffee, Starbucks, and then, not necessarily, I've also, shopping centers where grocery stores, because people still need to go to the market, right? So those are the types of things in my mind that are coming to the top of my head. That would be the types of tenancies, your co-tenancies that you'd want to supplement one another. They're not going to cannibalize one another, because you sometimes see, you go to food courts and you're like, why have they got two why are the two burger chains right next door to each other? That doesn't make any sense to me. If you're going to own retail, make sure that it's a want that people need to experience something, as you just said, but something that's not going to eat each other.
Sure.
So I think it's really incredible. What are you also seeing with the value add play in those large box retailers? I know I've spoken to a couple of folks about how you talk about exactly what you just said. Some big chains want to own the land, right? So some of the value add is you go and you buy this huge park, and you go and you subdivide it up and sell that dirt to the individual, Krispy Kreme, or it could be to the bank, or it could be to Starbucks. Are you seeing those types of value add opportunities as well in and around the sort of Midwest type of shopping centers as we think of it today?
Yeah, I mean, so we focus mainly on primary LA markets, and more on strip and infill retail mixed use opportunities. But from what and we track Midwest. So in terms of the Midwest, yes, that continues to be an opportunity where there's job growth, specifically around tech. So, Midwest, I would say, there's great opportunity to be continuing to develop out in Austin, in, Denver, in areas where there's corridors of significant job growth that warrant, developers going in saying, yeah, I'm going to control this whole site. And then on the basis of, I'm going to now create what the new version of the Target wants to be, like the urban store, not the full Target. And I'll either sell or lease a portion of the site. Then they'll be my anchor, and then together we'll lock shoulders and program what makes sense to be the rest. So that's always the fun puzzle. Putting together that puzzle is really the fun, art, and the science of doing some of that development.
No, 100%. So where are you seeing retail going, and back to more focusing on your tier one markets? What's the future hold for retail here in your world?
I'm sorry?
What's the future hold? Where are we going in 2019?
I mean, listen, we're late cycle right now. So our investment philosophy and approach is buy in very high barrier to entry areas and add value. And so you have effectively what I call a margin of safety in the location, because there's always going to be demand for a property on the beach that has office and retail on it. So we say, okay, if that's one component, but the other component is, can we still add value to the space today? Right. So the opportunity for us is really repositioning existing buildings to meet the new needs of the customer, the worker, as well as the user and form of living. So we believe in these high barrier entry markets, there's still multiple needs of space in a single space. So living, working, playing, all those you can try to service in one space. That then to us, albeit it's more expensive, it's not Denver, it's definitely not in Texas, provides a margin of safety in the form of defense. So when, if the cycle were to turn on us or there would be a massive correction, we're still sitting in a very highly regarded and well-located property. Right. On the balance side, we do invest in the emerging cores, emerging urban corridors, and those are characterized by density compaction or a lot of foot traffic and car traffic. And those we're servicing more daily needs in the form of reprogramming strip centers. So we see within the tier one, both within super well-located stuff as well as the emerging corridors, there's a good margin of safety to continue to basically take what worked in the past, repurpose it for what's now going to, with the future being really more mixed use in our view.
Yeah, and being focused on the fact that there's a true value add there, right? Like you have to be changing this 20,000, 30,000 square foot space that was one tenant into maybe 4 different tenants, because the space needs have reduced, as you explained earlier in the show.
Absolutely. I mean, the programming really involves, if that was a 20,000 foot retail space, what I call right sizing the retail to what's important that a retailer can really live with and prosper in, which leaves then a bunch of space that in a well-located, property, other people want to use in other ways. And so the way we just see it very simply is we believe the world in these areas where there's density compaction is a mixed use world. And mixed use really means multiple uses for one space. And one space really, multiple uses really means multiple lines of revenue. Multiple lines of revenue means diversification, not just focus on one thing. And hopefully that really the goal of all of that is to convert into higher value. So you have an underperforming tenant in a single space that can be multiple tenants doing multiple things and diversifying and working together. So it's a really fun opportunity right now that we have.
I could talk to you all about hours about this on this, because we haven't got into the cash flow versus the long-term appreciation and all that sort of stuff. But I think we've hit the main topics on the head here today. I do want to be respectful of your time.
Sure.
So we're going to dive into the top 5 investing tips. You ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
Mate, what is the daily habit that you practice to keep on track towards your goals?
Showing up.
So repeat that?
Showing up.
Showing up.
Show up.
Always show up. Love it.
Okay. One further, cold showers.
Well, sorry, repeat that. It was a little bit hard to hear again.
Cold showers.
Cold showers, yeah.
Yeah.
Tony Robbins, cold showers and ice baths, right?
Exactly. Cold showers in the morning. Nothing like priming yourself with a little bit of pain and getting comfortable with that pain in the morning. It just sets you up for the day.
Yep. Love it. Love it. Who is the most influential person in your career to date?
My mentor, one of my mentors, who really, he inspired me to really take a run at the large business as a solopreneur and really made it feel like it was extremely feasible and, more importantly, really fun.
Awesome. What's the number one tool in your business today, whether it be software or hardware related?
The number one tool in our business today is our people. I have a fantastic associate, and I wouldn't want to call him a tool, but but I would say asset, that is extremely resourceful and, like a tool, extension of me, the team, and so we really work hard and well together.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, I can't agree with you more. People makes the dream work. So, mate, what has been in one sentence? What has been the biggest failure you've experienced in your career to date, and what did you learn from that failure?
Yeah, early success is the worst teacher.
Love it. Early success is the worst. I'm going to write that down. Early success.
Yeah.
Is the worst teacher. What happened in your instance?
Well, I formed this company 5 years ago. In our second year, we decided to go back to investing from doing about a year of consulting, and said, okay, well, we're doing a lot of institutional deals, and why not try to do some more? And right away on my first try, we acquired and currently still manage a $34 million project with JP Morgan Asset Management out of New York. And I would tell you that put in an excessive amount of confidence in making it feel easy. It definitely wasn't an easy transaction. It had its challenges, and we did everything, and everything thankfully is working great. But I would tell you that in me, it created this sense of now expectation that that's how the rest of it's supposed to go. It's supposed to go easy. It's supposed to have this very linear path. And the reality is, it's a very disrupted path. There are ups and downs. People, companies, circumstances all change. And so for you to say, well, I just got this great thing accomplished and I was quote unquote successful at it, and suddenly that carries forward, you put that past into your future, you're set up for the normal failure feels like a shock to the system and the soul. So I think what in hindsight, to me, the best, as everyone says, the best teacher is failure, is taking a few blows, getting your quote unquote teeth kicked in. For me, because we were lucky and fortunate enough to have that early success, some of these lessons got a little pushed down. And so I'd say that was really the biggest lesson learned today.
Awesome. I think that's so important to recognize that you do have early success and how that it may not be, as you said, a linear path upwards. You're going to have some bumps along the way. So it's a good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it was like the ultimate feeding of the ego where we got that deal done. It said, see, I told you I could do it all by myself. And it was like, oh God, that's not good. Anybody else.
Love it.
Feel free to delete that part of this podcast. You did, right?
Please. The more raw and vulnerable, the better. Listeners love that. Mate, where can people reach you to continue the conversation? They want to be more in your sphere of influence. They want to check you out. Where do they go?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me. My name is Babak Ziai. I think you have my name on the intro for the podcast, but Babak. That's my first name, last name, Z as in zebra, I-A-I. I'm also on Twitter at BrandviewCap, and you can see our website at www.brandviewcap.com. Brand like brand name, view like mountain view, cap like baseball cap, brandviewcap.com. So you can email us through there, and would love to hear from your listeners in any way, be helpful to you and your ecosystem.
Awesome, man. Well, for anyone who couldn't quite hear that, it was brandviewcap.com. We will have all that up on the show notes and much, much more. But, I really want to thank you for taking some time out of your day, Babak, because you provided some incredible information. And just I want to summarize, I think what you explained about how retail sectors are being disrupted because they historically have had too much space, and everyone's panicking that these big box retailers are going out of business. But it's more to do with the pace at which technology is advancing, and that maybe they just need to reevaluate how much space they're renting for. You use the Adidas analogy where they were in a huge 5,000 square foot space. They need to downsize because they don't need as much because people are buying online, and maybe they still want to come in and try some things on. I also love your thought philosophy around creating people want to get, retail has historically been about interacting with other humans, and that's so true. You use the Burning Man and the Coachella analogy about people go out and want to be in and around other people, and that's what you've got to create in terms of your retail spaces, and that in turn creates mixed use. So like when you go to Coachella, you have food stalls, you have music, you have paraphernalia, you have accommodation, you have all these different things adding different revenue streams into the space. And that's what how you got to look at it at retail as well. And the last thing I want to talk about is the co-tenancy, having those suppliers or vendors who are still very mano a mano, nails, banking, fitness, shopping centers to go get your groceries and stuff like that. Those are very still core tenancies that will complement one another instead of being, one big massive Sears or one big massive Home Depot. Did I leave anything out?
No, I think you nailed it. And I only say that it's part of a seismic shift, which is really the evolution. And so I think it's really the press and the headlines have made it sound like really an apocalypse when it's really a really worthwhile and exciting shift for everyone to be able to use these spaces more effectively together and really ultimately interact more. And I think that's really been what everybody's trying to figure out how to get back to. So we're excited to be a part of that.
I love it, mate. Well, look, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll catch up soon.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Well, there you have it, another cracking episode jam-packed with some incredible advice and just some real insight into the retail world and how it's shifting and going to continue to shift, and how we as investors need to adapt and ride that wave. Please make sure you check out all the show notes from today's show. Babak's contact information, if you want to get in touch with him, it'll be up on my website at readgoossens.com. Thanks again for taking some time out of your day to continue to grow your financial IQ, because that's what we're all about here on this show. And we're going to do this all again next week. So be bold, be brave, and remember, go give life a crack.